everybody, how y'all doing out there? I am your host, and my name is Professor Khalil Amani. And this is Khalil Amani's World 100. Oh yeah, we gonna get right to it. Oh my goodness. My. Yeah. Old Jake Doctrine, y'all. I said old Jake Doctrine, aka Israel Doctrine, aka Struggle Doctrine. I got them on the good foot. I got them over there wrestling with the whole idea that the phrase Israelite Christian is a straight oxymoron. Oh yeah. Today, on this beautiful Monday, December the 1st, he was wrestling and trying to convince himself that to be an Israelite was strictly a nationality and had nothing to do with the 613 laws, statutes, judgments, and commandments. Those things, those laws, which distinguish the Israelite nation from all other nations on the earth. Oh, he tried it. But nigga, the 613 laws of the Israelites, it goes hand in hand with the Israelite title nationality. It's like peanut butter and jelly. You can't disassociate the Moses 613 laws from the nationality, nigga. This is the whole ideal of why your God claimed that y'all niggas are supposed to be a peculiar people, a special people above all people on the earth, because you keep these laws, and keeping these laws means that you becoming, as the Bible says, an ensign, a sign unto the nations. But look at you now. I got old Jake Doctrine over there trying to make distinctions between Israelite as a nationality and Israelite as a worshiper and commandment keeper of the 613 laws. You can't do that, nigga. You trying to move the goalposts about what it means to be an Israelite. What it means to be an Israelite, it means that you are a practitioner of the 613 laws, statutes, judgments, and commandments. Being an Israelite doesn't just mean that's your nationality. There's a burden and a prescription that comes along and comes with being an Israelite. But look at him. I got him backed all the way up in the corner. I got this nigga trying to say, I'm an Israelite. Israelite is my nationality, but my faith is Christian. No, nigga, no. To be an Israelite, see, that's why your man's over there calling you a Jake. You're a fake ass Israelite, because a real Israelite, their number one duty is keeping the 613 laws. To be an Israelite is to be a religious person. But you're trying to make distinctions. I got you. We'll come back to that. But I just wanted to make that known and let y'all see how I got this nigga doing a Michael Jackson moonwalk. How I got this nigga trying to make a straight up a disassociation between Israelite as a strict nationality and Christian as his religion. But you can't do that, because to be an Israelite, it means you are beholden to the 613 laws. But listen to Pizzy. He wants to define Israelite as simply and merely and purely a nationalistic designation, and it's not just that. People know that the Israelites have their own God named Yahweh, and the Israelites have their own laws, the Ten Commandments, the 613 laws. That's all a part of being an Israelite. So Israel doctrine, old Jake doctrine, he's off his rocker. He's wrong as two left shoes, because you can't be an Israelite without being beholden to the 613 laws of the Old Testament. That and that alone is what makes you an Israelite outside of the DNA, that you are a law keeper. You can't be a law keeper and a law breaker. How can you be an Israelite, a law keeper, and a Christian, a law breaker? It's an oxymoron, my nigga. It's cringeworthy listening to these arguments, trying to clap back at what I'm saying, because I'm teaching the truth. And my numbers bear that out. Ain't nobody watching that nigga except me and a couple other people. Did y'all hear Israel Doctrine today? I mean, mind you, Jake Doctrine, this Hebrew Israelite named Jake Doctrine, aka Israel Doctrine, he was born in 1977. I was 17 years old in 1977. The 70s was a great era. It was a great era for black people. We were on the rise economically. We were buying homes. I mean, our parents were. I was still a teenager. But the 70s was a good time for black folk. A great time. We were on the rise. But this guy, Israel Doctrine. He acts like he was born during Reconstruction, during Jim Crow. You know, he act like his era was, 1875 and 1920. Reconstruction was like 1865 to the 1900s. Jim Crow was the 1900s to about the 1940s or so. But this nigga was born 3 years shy of the 1980s. What am I getting to? This nigga said just today, I come from an era. I'm from the South. I come from an era when black people would sign their name with an X. Nigga, if you don't cut it out, if you don't stop that shit, I come from an era. I'm from the South. I come from an era where black people were signing their name with an X. Now, granted, there are some people in the 70s that were born in the 1910s, 1920s, and 1930s that were illiterate. That's a fact. And I'm sure there were, a small, puny, itsy-bitsy part of black America that were still illiterate and uneducated, and that probably did use an X for their signature. But when you're born in 1977, nigga, you a parrot. You're an aper. You're a regurgitator. You're a copycatter. You're just upchucking and vomiting information you heard about the old folks. Did Carl Albert Davis, a.k.a. Jake Doctrine, really see somebody back in the old days signing their name with the X? I highly doubt it. I was born in 1960, and I ain't never seen a black person sign their name with an X. I'm not saying it didn't go on, because it did go on. But what are the chances? What are the chances that a man born 17 years after me saw the X being used as signature and I didn't? And by the way, I grew up in the South too. Let me let you. Let me. It's weird though. We're gonna get to our lesson today shortly. We're gonna get to our lesson. But listen to this shit here. I mean, this nigga was born in 1977, but he wants to make you think because he's a Southern boy that he was back there doing Reconstruction, from 1865 to 1900s, He wants you to think that he came out of the Jim Crow era of the 1900s to about the 1940s or 50s. Because he's from the South. And because he's illiterate. And because he dropped out somewhere around the 7th or 8th grade. He wants to talk that shit like education in the South was only for rich folks and white folks and niggas and black folk and coloreds and Negroes. We didn't get educated in the South. We got the whole Topeka versus the Topeka Board of Education versus Brown. That happened in Little Rock, Arkansas, in the 50s, where little black boys and girls were facing the wrath of ignorant, racist white people, adults and white people, children, just for trying to get an education. We're talking about the 50s, 1954. Topeka Board of Education versus Brown, 1954. In his state of Arkansas. It made national news. It made international news. They had to bring in the goddamn National Guard so that little black boys and girls could go to public school with white kids. 1954. And this nigga is born in 1977. So he doesn't see a public school until the 1980s. 77, he born. 78, 79, 80. He's 3 years old in 1980. This nigga doesn't see public education until about 1983. He's about 6 years old, and now he goes to first grade. But listen to this guy talk. You would think he was born back in the times of Reconstruction and Jim Crow. Listen to this shit here.
See, I'm from the South. I remember as a young boy where men would go to the bank and sign an X because they couldn't sign their name.
You don't remember that shit, nigga. You do not remember that. You are just regurgitating the fact that you know that back in the day, there were men who signed their name with an X. I'm 17 years older than you. From the South as well. And I ain't never seen a black man sign their name with an X. My father didn't use an X. My mother didn't use an X. And they were born in the 1930s. Now, maybe your family was straight illiterate like you, and maybe they did use an X. But, nigga, I think you just talking out your ass. I'm from the South. Like, what does the South have to do with education? One of the most brilliant men we know, the great and honorable Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is a Southern boy who obtained the highest degree known on earth, the PhD. Many of the great black leaders came out of the South. H. Rap Brown, Stokely Carmichael. These niggas are from black colleges and universities in the South. What is you talking about, my nigga? What is you talking about? I'm from the South. And I seen old men sign their name with an X. Cut it out, my nigga. Cut it out.
See, I'm from the South. I remember as a young boy where men would go to the bank and sign an X because they couldn't sign their name.
So we talking about, he says, as a young boy. As a young boy, for him to remember that. Now we're talking not the 70s, we're talking about the 80s. Because the first 3 years of your life, you don't remember shit. From birth to about 3, you don't remember shit. You don't start having a goddamn memory until you get about 4 years old. On average. But by the time he was a little boy walking and going to the bank with old men, that would have been the 1980s. That would have been when he was 6, 7, 8, 9. 1983, 1984, 1985, 1986. But he's trying to make it like during the 80s in Arkansas, it was just like Reconstruction. 1960, 1867, 1880, 1890. He's trying to make you think that Arkansas was like, Jim Crow. 1910, 1912, 1920, 1930. Cut it out, my nigga. By the time you really started understanding things and seeing things and going to banks with daddy or going to banks with so-called black men, nigga, you was 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. That would have been 1983, 84, 85, 86, 87. Cut it out. My nigga, cut it out. I'm not saying there weren't still a population of uneducated black men and women, because there was. And yes, I'm sure there were some uneducated Negroes in the 1980s that still couldn't read or write, that used the X. I'm sure. I just don't believe he saw that. I think he's parroting bullshit. Not that he read, because the nigga don't read books. Parroting shit from watching YouTube videos about illiteracy among black folk. Which takes us to this real quick. And then we'll get to our lesson. Something I just pulled up off the internet. Specific statistics on the percentage of black Americans who used X as a signature in the 1980s, that's when Carl would have been 5, 6, 7, 8, are not available in public data. By this period, high school completion rates for young black adults had risen dramatically, and literacy rates between black and white adults were near equal, making the use of an X mark due to illiteracy extremely rare. Again, it probably happened, but it was extremely rare that there were still some black people in the 1980s. We're talking about the 80s. We're talking about the 80s when Carl Albert Davis went to first grade in 1983. See, Carl Albert Davis, he went to elementary school starting around 1983 at 6 years old because he was born in 1977. And so by the time Carl Albert Davis understood anything about black people being undereducated, he would have been probably 10, 11, 12 years old, 1985, 86, 87. And by then, black adults, young black adults had risen dramatically, and literacy rates between black and white adults were near equal. Adults, not children, making the use of an X mark due to illiteracy extremely rare, my nigga. It's extremely rare. But you're going to tell us you saw the X being used when you was a boy. You's a goddamn liar. The use of a mark instead of a signature was primarily associated with the historical periods of mandated illiteracy, such as slavery and the Jim Crow era, not the modern 1980s. See, nigga, you just you're a talebearer. All you doing, my nigga, is trying to justify why you are illiterate. That's all you're doing. You're trying to justify your illiteracy by presupposing that during the mid-1980s, niggas in the South couldn't read and write. No, it was you, my nigga. Niggas in the South were still using an X as their signature. Again, I'm sure there was 2 or 3 old heads that were born in 1910, 1920, 1930 that were using the X because they were illiterate. They came through Reconstruction and Jim Crow. But we read that it was extremely rare By the 1980s, it was extremely rare to find someone using an X as their signature. So what we got is, we got old Jake Doctrine. You know, he's a mythologist. He's talking mythology. He's just spouting some shit that he saw on YouTube about illiteracy rates back in the day, and claiming that when he was a little boy, circa 1985-86, that he actually saw black men go to the bank and sign an X for their name. The nigga didn't see that shit. Anyway, I just wanted to pull that up and show you how rare it was. Yeah. The use of a mark instead of a signature, the use of an X instead of a signature, was primarily associated with historical periods of mandated illiteracy, such as slavery from the 1600s to the 1800s, and the Jim Crow era and Reconstruction. Not the modern 1980s. Nigga, use a bold-faced lie. You ain't never seen a black man, you never seen nobody go to no bank and sign an X for their name. You just making up shit to sound, you just making up this kind of illiteracy shit to bolster the fact that you are illiterate. This is your justification for why you dropped out of school. This is your justification for not being a reader or a writer. You're trying to throw this illiteracy on the South, and it's just not true. Being a good old Southern boy myself, I know it's not true. And there are enough historical figures that come from the South that are not illiterate. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Stokely Carmichael, H. Rap Brown, and the list goes on and on. Brothers from the South that made big contributions to the evolution and to the well-being of African Americans as a people. Cut it out, my nigga. You illiterate, you're stupid, you're dumb, and it has nothing to do with living in Arkansas or living in the South. And you ain't never seen no black man sign his name with an X, my nigga. That's some shit you ain't read it, but that's some shit you heard about by watching a video on YouTube, nigga. You ain't never seen it. I'm 17 years older than you, raised and reared in the South, and I have never seen a black person use an X as a signature. Use a bold-faced liar. Okay, we spent 20 minutes on that, 23 minutes. Now let's get to our subject today. I mean, every day he says some stuff that make me go, wow. 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 Nigga he's a child of the 80s. What another great time to be a child. The 80s, those kids that grew up in the 80s, they were the last generation of children that actually went outside and played. Right before the age of social media and the internet and cell phones and all that great shit that kept kids in their bedrooms on a Saturday. He was the last generation. I got kids born in 80, 83, 86, and 87. I know they played outside because there was no internet. But whoa, when those mid-90s came. Oh, Jake Doctrine, you're a piece of work, my nigga. Now, let's shift gears. We're talking about this thing called being a Christian. Because Israel Doctrine purports to be something new, something chic, something that he just created a year ago. Now, the Israelites in the Bible have been around for about, 3,500 years. The Christians have been around for about, 2,000 years. And nobody, for the last 3,500 years, nobody for 3,500 years, nobody for the last 2,000 years during the days of Jesus Christ has ever came up with the fancy idea of putting the phrase Israelite with Christian. Nobody has come and said, you know, let's create a new phrase called Israelite Christian. This phrase is about a year old. You can go in no biblical encyclopedia, no biblical dictionary, no commentaries, not the Oxford encyclopedia or Bible dictionary, not Unger's, not Strong's, not the Interpreter's Dictionary of the Bible, not the Urban's Bible Dictionary. This phrase is unknown because it was just created a year ago. And the reason that no one ever thought about it, going back to 3,500 years, going back to 2,000 years during the days of Jesus, the reason no one ever thought about it, because people know that to be an Israelite is to be someone who believes in the 613 laws, statutes, judgments, and commandments of the Bible. And to be a Christian, it means, and I don't care what denomination, but to be a Christian, it means that Jesus Christ came and he did away with the Mosaic law. He did away with the 613 laws, statutes, judgments, and commandments. That to be a Christian, you don't have to abide by all that Old Testament stuff. Sacrificing lambs and sending goats into the wilderness and Passover and the Feast of Trumpets and the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the Feast of Tabernacles and the Feast of Weeks and the Feast of Booths. All that Old Testament stuff that these people practice as a nationality, these people, through the blood of Jesus on the cross, says we don't do that shit no more. And so it becomes a straight oxymoron to call yourself an Israelite, a law keeper, versus a Christian, a law breaker. Christianity, through Jesus Christ, did away with the law. The law is abrogated. I don't care what particular branch of Christianity, denomination you talk about, that is a central tenet to the faith. We do not live under the Old Testament Israelite law. And you cannot, as old struggle doctrine, as old Jake doctrine tries to do, he tries to simply make Israelite a nationality only. You can't do that. He tries to make Israelite simply a nationality having nothing to do with law. That's what he argued today. But the reality is the Israelites, according to the Bible, were God's chosen people, special people, set aside, particular people, a people of kings that's going to rule. And the reason that they are set aside, they become an ensign to the nation, a sign to the nation, because they keep the laws of God. So you can't just call being an Israelite a mere nationality without including the fact that they had laws that made them the so-called Israelites. Law keeper, law breaker. Oxymoron. You can't be both. All right. All right. Let's listen to Israel Doctrine as he brags that he created this phrase. Listen to him as he tells us he made this phrase up about a year ago. All right, let's do this. Let's do this. We're gonna go over here. And we are going to go to the one. We got it right here. Have a listen to Israel Doctrine as he brags that he is the founder of this phrase. 2,000 years after Jesus, he comes up with this stupid oxymoronic phrase. Listen to this.
Okay, we're finna get into it. This is something I did back in the 1st, 5th, 2024, last year. I came up with this term. Like everybody come up with terms, like the term Hebrew Israelite. Somebody came up with that. They never explained it. They come up with other terms and stuff. The author of the term, or the one that comes up with the term, should explain the term. So we finna go into explanation of what I'm talking about, and what do the term mean and stuff. So
Okay, so we've established that old Jake Doctrine is the author and originator of this stupid oxymoronic phrase, Israelite Christian. His genius came up with it. None of the church fathers for the last 2,000 years came up with it, but he came up with it. Okay, that's number one. So we've established that. He says it again. Let me show you to play this here, please. And see, 22:33. Yeah, I had to mark this stuff. Okay, 22. Right there. He says it again.
And as you see, I've been doing this since 2004. Because like I said, I came up with the term for my church, the Israel of God, the mixed multitude, the church, that I have stewardship over. The Lord gave me stewardship over everybody that was sitting in my pews, though I ain't got no physical building now.
That's right, nigga. So you have stewardship over nothingness. You have stewardship over yourself, because no one is sitting in your pews because you don't have a brick and mortar church. Nigga, you don't even have an online church. So you're only giving stewardship over yourself. The extent of Jake Doctrine's stewardship is over himself. This nigga don't have a brick and mortar church down there on, Parker Road or somewhere. He ain't got an online church on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Snapchat. This nigga ain't got nobody who follows him. But we now know that he says he's the founder of the phrase. Wow, wow, wow. Now let's move further. Let's deal with this Christian thing. Because he wants to be, he wants to be a Christian. An Israelite Christian. But what this nigga doesn't know about this word Christian, it was a proverb and a byword. It was a derogatory word when the word came out. It was just like the word Hebrew that he likes to tell everybody, that it was the Egyptians and the Canaanites who started calling the Israelites, or the Hebrews, Abraham's people, Hebrews. The same can be said for the word Christian. And I know a lot of you all didn't know this. But this nigga believes that being called a Christian is a beautiful thing. He believes that the first Christians were Israelites. Let's let him say it. First Christians, Israelites. Back to 235. Here we go.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The first Christians were Israelites.
Okay, so that was his sycophant. That was Ananias, his reader. He's reading the words of Jake Doctrine, though. Those aren't Ananias' words. Those are the words written down that Ananias, the reader, is reading from old struggle doctrine, old Jake doctrine. Say it one more again.
You get them.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The first Christians were Israelites.
Okay. That right there is an outright lie. The first Christians were Israelites. That's a lie. Okay, we covered that. And we're going to show, let's go to 620 where they mentioned something similar to that again. Get that queued up to about right there.
For those who lack knowledge and understanding of this matter, the first Christians, biblical Christians, were Israelites.
There he goes again. Oh, Ananias. Again, he's reading Jake Doctrine's words. Now, either it's the truth or it's not. Either he's right or I'm right. Either he's telling the truth and I'm lying, or either he's a liar and I'm telling the truth. Remember what they said, people. The first Christians were Israelites. Is that true? I said, remember what they just said. The first Christians were Israelites. Now, there's a couple of ways to do this. We'll start with the easy way. We just go to Google. We just ask the internet, were the first Christians Israelites? Let's just go do that first. And when we do that, let's pull it up. Let's see. That's not the one. Let's try. We just pull it up. Let me find it. Let's see. That's not it. Did I not put that one on the screen? Hold on, people. Did I not put that? Let me just pull it up. I got it in my phone here. Look at my gallery here. That's that. That one. That one. Oh, I didn't put it up. Oh, well, we're going to have to put it up right now. We do that right now, and then we can show it to you. Let's put it on. Let me put it on here, there, and put it on there. All right, let's go and pull it up now. This is reference number 1. We go to Facebook first. I put it on Facebook. Now I gotta get it out of there. Okay, there it goes. And then there, and let's bring it over to my computer, and then we'll have it. We'll just put first Christ. All right. And then we'll get rid of it off of Facebook because we don't need it over there. All right. And then we go over and let's get it. There. How did I mess that up? How did I mess that up? I thought I had that one. Okay, let's see. Let me find it now. I got to find it on here. Oh, there it is. Okay. We don't need all of that now. It's just getting crazy. All right. Now we got to go back because I want to make sure we get this right. I'm going to make sure we get this right. That's right. I want to make sure we get this right. All right. So 620. Let's make sure we get this right.
For those who lack knowledge and understanding of this matter, the first Christians, biblical Christians, were Israelites.
There we go. The first Christians, the first biblical Christians were Israelite. I am telling you that is an absolute lie. That the first Christians were not Israelites. Now, let's go to my source that I had to pull up. And here's the answer just by going to regular old Google AI. See, AI. No, Jesus' immediate followers were not called Christians. Grand opening, grand closing. See? They were initially called disciples, believers, or followers of the way. Remember, I gave you those scriptures back in my last lesson on this subject? I gave you like 5 different scriptures that showed that Jesus' disciples, after he dies, they are called the way, or those of that way, or those of this way. The operative word being way. But no, Jesus' immediate followers were not called Christians. They were initially called disciples, believers, or followers of the way. The term Christian was first used by non-believers in Antioch around 40 to 44 CE to describe followers of Christ, possibly as a derogatory term that the believers later embraced as a badge of honor. My goodness. You see, these niggas are liars and they don't know proper first century Christian history. No, 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 no. The first Christians were not Israelites. The first Christians were not Israelites. No, Jesus' immediate followers were not called Christians. So when you hear a rat bastard liar, let's go back a little bit.
It's evil. This is Bible history, people. A lot of people don't know Bible history, but keep reading, please.
For those who lack knowledge and understanding of this matter, the first Christians, biblical Christians, were Israelites.
The first biblical Christians was Israelite, based upon the biblical writings.
Y'all heard that bullshit. but if you notice, and if you're paying attention, he said based on biblical writings. But if you notice and paying attention, they don't give those particular biblical writings that say that bullshit. And AI and Google tells you no. The first followers of Jesus were not known. They were Israelites, but they weren't called Christians. They were called disciples and the way. How can you be so biblically wrong? How?
Keep reading, please.
For those who lack knowledge and understanding of this.
Talking about lacking knowledge and understanding. See, people be talking loud, reading loud, but they be wrong as fuck. This dude is wrong. He's only reading, he's only regurgitating, he's only parroting, he's only aping, he's only regurgitating, he's only vomiting struggle doctrine, Jake Doctrine's words. These aren't his words. He's just trying to bring these lies to life.
This matter, the first Christians, biblical Christians, were Israelites.
No, they weren't. Use a goddamn lie. Use a motherfucking lie. Now he says it, and then Israel Doctrine says it right behind him.
The first biblical Christians was Israelite.
No, they weren't. What do you mean biblical Christians? Are there something called a non-biblical Christian? Do you hear the weird old wordplay? Do you hear the weird old word salad? What the fuck is a biblical Christian? If there's a biblical Christian, then there must be an unbiblical Christian. That's how that works. When you throw a name out there like biblical, it suggests that it is a different representation of some other shit. And so what you're hearing when you hear words like biblical Christian, that's called word salad. What do you mean biblical Christian? All Christians are biblical. All Christians use the Bible as a source of their understanding of their faith. What does he mean, biblical Christian? Can you show us those who are not biblical Christians? It's word salad. Same thing when you like to say Bible Christian. This word salad. What the fuck is a Bible Christian? For there to be a Bible Christian, it presumes that there are people that are not Bible Christians. Let me show you what he said. These niggas be using words just to, it's word salad. Listen, it's weird. Let's go back. Listen to him say Bible Christian. Now what the fuck is a Bible Christian? Is there an un-Bible Christian? Is there a no Bible Christian?
Or the importance of the biblical Israelites or Christians.
Biblical Israelite Christians. See, I got brothers that say they Bible Christians.
See? I have never heard, he says he has brothers who say they are Bible Christians. I've never heard that phrase used until now. What the fuck is a Bible Christian? Don't Christians use the Bible? Yes, they do. Again, if you are going to designate and label somebody as a Bible Christian, by extrapolation, by innuendo, by deduction, by deductive reasoning, it suggests by implication that there are Christians who are not Bible Christians. And so, the word ends up being nothing but word salad. There's no such thing as a Bible Christian. The fuck is that? Show me one Bible teacher. Show me one preacher. I don't care how bad they are, how good they are. Prosperity preachers, mega church preachers, Hebrew Israelite teachers. Have you ever heard the word Bible Christian? And the answer is probably no. And the reason you've never heard the phrase Bible Christian, because they don't exist. It's a stupid phrase. For all Christians have the Bible as the source of their spiritual authority. It makes no sense. It's like saying a black African. Most Africans are black, besides those South Afrikaners, forgive them. It's word salad, it's wordplay. If there is something called a Bible Christian, then there has to be something that's called a non-Bible Christian. But it's word salad. And you have to admit, you have never heard a preacher in your life. I don't care if you're 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. I don't care where you're at on the age spectrum. You've never heard a preacher on TV. You've never heard T.D. Jakes, Creflo Dollar. You've never heard Reverend Chickenfoot. You've never heard no preacher. You've never heard no Hebrew Israelite. Tazariak, Yohana, Bishop, what's his name? You've never heard Guerrilla Hebrew. You've never heard these people. Not even, well, I'm going to say he might have said, who knows. You've never heard the phrase Bible Christian. It's Jake Doctrine's made up bullshit, just like he made up Israelite Christian. He's into making up terms. He's into word salad. He's into making up words and phrases that don't even make sense. Israelite Christian makes no sense. Bible Christian makes no sense. I'm crossing off these things as I go here. We got that out the way. Ananias, my nigga, you come on home whenever you're ready. Now back to this word Christian. He called himself an Israelite Christian. Old struggle doctrine, old Jake doctrine. He can't stand the phrase Hebrew Israelite. because it's duly noted that the word Hebrew is a gentilic, a Gentile term that was thrown on the back of Abraham and his people. So if you want it to be absolutely 100% correct, you shouldn't use the term Hebrew. But the same history applies for the word Christian. It is a non-Jewish word. It is a non-Hebrew word. It is a non-Israelite word. It is a word that comes out of that same gentilic, Gentile arena. Hebrew, the word Hebrew comes from the Isles of the Gentiles. The word Christian also comes from the Isles of the Gentiles. And so when these liars say that the first Christians were Israelites, they are absolutely 1000% wrong. The first Christians were Gentiles, not Israelites. And we have the proof simply because we know that that phrase Christian comes out of the Greek and Latin lexicon. Christian does not come from the Hebrew language. It comes from the Greek via the Latin language. Christian from Christos and Christiani. And if the word Christ and Christian are from Greek, then it would have been foreign to the immediate followers of Jesus. James, the brother of Jesus. John, the beloved. Peter, the rock. Mary Magdalene, the wife of Jesus. And those folks that really were the first people that would convert to Jesus' way of thinking. They were not Christian. That word Christian formulated 400 miles away in Antioch. From Jerusalem to Antioch is a 400-mile trip. That's where the word is first used. It tells us right there in the goddamn Bible that the phrase, the name Christian comes into our purview 400 miles away from where the Jerusalem church set up shop, 400 miles away from James, the leader of the Jerusalem and the Jesus movement, 400 miles away from Peter, 400 miles away from John, 400 miles away from Mary Magdalene, 400 miles away from all of the original disciples of Jesus. That's where the name Christian originates, in Antioch, 400 miles from the holy city of Jerusalem. And we know that simply by reading the Bible. The Bible tells us who started calling them Christians first. Acts 11:26. I said the name Christian, it wasn't a good name when it came out. I'm going to prove it. But let's just show you this first. Let's just show you when the first time this word was used. I said Acts, the 11th chapter, verse 26. And when he had found him, Barnabas found Paul, he brought him unto Antioch. That's in Syria. That's 400 miles from where the original disciples were doing their thing in Jerusalem. And it came to pass that a whole year they assembled themselves with the church, not the disciples of Jesus, with Paul's Gentile church, and taught much people. And the disciples not of Jesus, the disciples of Paul, were called Christians first in Antioch, Syria. Get your shit together. Get your shit together. Now let's go take a deeper dive into this word Christian. Niggas want to talk about world versus secular. I'm of the world. I'm of the world. We'll get back to that conversation. And so we read again. After hearing the lie, we read again that no, Jesus' immediate followers were not called Christians. But these niggas says that the first Christians were Israelites. No, my niggas. The first Christians were Gentiles. That's what you don't understand. But I got AI on my side. I got Google on my side. I got the research on my side. Now let's put that down and let's look at this. We'll go here first. The first non-biblical reference to Christian comes from the Roman historian Tacitus in his work Annaeus around 116 AD. He wrote about Christians in Rome, stating that the name derived from Christus, who was executed by Pontius Pilate during the reign of Tiberius. All right, just food for thought. Put that down. Let's go to another one. Here it goes. People began being called Christians around 100 AD in Antioch, according to the Acts of the Apostles. I just read that. See? The term was first used by non-Jewish, got it? Non-Jewish inhabitants, that would be Gentiles, of Antioch to refer to the followers of Jesus. The early Jewish Christians referred to themselves as being of the way. Goddamn. These niggas don't know. See, this word called Christians, it was created by non-Jews. It was created by Gentiles around 100 AD in Antioch, as we just read in the Bible, according to the Acts of the Apostles. The term was first used by Israelites? No. The term was used by non-Jewish, non-Hebrew, or non-Israelites. The term was first used by non-Jewish inhabitants of Antioch to refer to the followers of Jesus. But here it is. And the early Jewish Christians, which they weren't Jewish Christians, there was never a thing called a Jewish Christian, but the early Jewish Christians, they referred to themselves not as Jewish Christians, they referred to themselves as being of the way. Goddamn. So there was never a Jewish Christian. There was never a Jewish Christian. AI only just says Jewish Christian to let you know that the people that you call Jewish Christians, they never refer to themselves as a Christian. They refer to themselves as people of the way. Of the way. Of the way. Acts, let's go. Let's go, and let me just show you that again. I've already done it, but I'll show it to you again. The first converts to Jesus, to the Jesus movement, were not called Christians. They were called those of the way, those of this way. Let's go read it for ourselves, starting with Acts chapter 9. Acts chapter 9, verse 2. Start 1. And Saul, yet breathing out threatenings and slaughter against the disciples of the Lord. We talking about the real disciples of the Lord, the people that knew Jesus, or the people that were converted to Jesus through James and John and Peter and Mary Magdalene. not the people that were converted in any other way, because at this time, Saul, who would become Paul, he had not started his mission of converting the Gentiles. So we know that the disciples of the Lord are strictly the people who got the message from the horse's mouth, from Jesus himself. Saul went to the high priest and desired of him letters to Damascus, to the synagogues, that if he found what? Any of this way, not any Christian, not any Jewish Christian, not any Christian at all, but if he found any of this way, who are the people of this way? The disciples of the Lord. The disciples of the Lord are the people of this way. That's what they were being called, because they didn't have a real name. They were simply called the people of this way. Got it? Got it? Got it? You got it. Okay. Acts 19. Acts 19 and 9. Acts 19 and 9. But when divers were hardened and believed not, but spake evil of that way, not of the Christians, not of the Jewish Christians, not of the Gentile Christians, not of any Christian, but of those of that way. Who was of that way? The original followers, the disciples of the Lord. That's what they were called. Verse 23. Verse 23. And the same time there arose no small stir about that way. That way was the people that sat with Jesus and the people that would be converted through John and James and Peter and Mary Magdalene and the original hearers and followers of Jesus Christ. Not Saul, not Paul, none of that. No Gentiles. The people of that way were Israelites only. They'd never heard the phrase Christian. That's some bullshit. 22 and 4. 22 and 4. This is Paul. Paul is bragging about how bad he did the original followers of Jesus. Paul brags and says, and I persecuted this way. I persecuted the Jesus movement. I persecuted the followers of Jesus. I persecuted the Israelites under Jesus that he calls this way. I persecuted them unto death. I didn't persecute the Christians. That's some bullshit these niggas is talking. That's some bullshit. They were not called Christians. They were called those of this way. That was their generic title. Yeah. 24, 22. 24 and 22. And when Felix heard these things, having more perfect knowledge of that way. Have I proved my point? Okay. I proved my point. Jake Doctrine and his sycophant, they don't know what the fuck they're talking about, because the original followers of Jesus were never called Christian. Now here's the other thing. Now that we know that the phrase Christian was concocted 400 miles away in Antioch. And here you got the governing body of the Jesus movement who were centered in Jerusalem, that were simply being called those of this way. Now think, people, for a moment. If you created an organization, would you allow some people 400 miles away to name the organization that you founded? Where'd they do that at? Do you think that James, who became the leader after Jesus dies, James became the leader of the Jerusalem church, not Peter, but James? People like to talk about Peter and Paul. But James was that nigga. James was the HNIC. James was the head nigga in charge. Peter was second. And then John the beloved. And then Mary Magdalene and everybody else. But do you think that James, the president, the leader of the Jerusalem church, an immediate disciple of Jesus himself, do you think he would let a motherfucker 400 miles down the road name or rename his organization? Do you think he would? I wouldn't. Do you think that the followers of Jesus who lived in Jerusalem, the leadership of the Jerusalem church, the leadership of the Jerusalem movement, do you think they would allow some, not even Jews, some motherfucking Gentiles 400 miles away to label and to designate what they are? To give Jesus' movement a fucking Gentile, Greek/Latin name. Do you think they would have? Do you think that the original leaders, the original followers, the original hearers of Jesus' words, the people that slept and ate and talked and walked with Jesus, the people that Jesus would die and resurrect and go visit, the people that sat at Jesus' feet at the Mount of Olives and listened to the Beatitudes, the people that were with Jesus when the Roman soldiers came to get that man, do you think they would allow their movement to be hijacked by Gentiles 400 miles away and told, this is what we're going to name the movement? Christian. Fuck no. Fuck no. I'm passionate about this because these people like Struggle Doctrine, like Jake Doctrine and his reading sycophant, these bastards are liars. They do not know historicity of first century Palestine and the Jesus movement. There's no way in hell that Jews and Hebrews and Israelites are going to let Gentiles name or rename their movement about their Mashiach, their Messiah, their anointed one. How dare some Gentiles think that they can name a Jewish movement? How dare Gentiles in Antioch think they can name an Israelite movement in Jerusalem? They want to hijack and they want to usurp. No, that's bullshit. That's why we have the whole Acts 15 and the council at Jerusalem. Because it is at this point where Paul is being called to come back and make an accounting of what the fuck he's teaching. But this word, I gotta get this in. But you want to be a Christian? Well, I tell you, to be a Christian was a proverb and a byword. To be a Christian was a negative thing. It was negative as fuck. Now let's go do some scholarship. Let's go read from the Oxford Companion to the Bible. Scholarship among scholarship. Some shit that old Jake Doctrine and his sycophant and Ananias, they don't do. Ananias, he sits there and reads verbatim old Struggle Doctrine's words. But we're going to go to real scholarship. Real scholarship. And we're going to read about Christian. Oh yeah. We're going to read about Christian from real Bible scholars, from real New Testament scholars. Look what they say. Because followers of Jesus use saints, brothers, and the way See? That's what they were calling themselves back then. Disciples often in the Gospels and other designations when referring to themselves, it is unlikely that the term Christian originated among Christians. In other words, it's unlikely that the term Christian originated amongst those people that knew Jesus' followers. In Acts 26:28, Agrippa uses Christian sarcastically. In 1 Peter 4:14-16, it is a term of reproach. God damn, that's negativity. It was a term of reproach. I said the word Christian was a term of reproach used during persecution. Thus, the term seems to have been derogatory, bad, negative, full of nastiness. I'm talking about the term Christian. These niggas over there talking about the first Israelites were Christians. That's a goddamn lie. The first Christians were Gentiles. And the phrase Christian, it was a derogatory term. The contemporary Roman historians Tacitus and Suetonius used the term that way. So now you got first century Christian historians Tacitus and Suetonius who use the term Christian as a derogatory term. They use the term that way. Tacitus refers to Christians as people hated for their evil deeds, and Suetonius calls them a new and evil superstition. Goddamn. If first applied to Jesus' followers at Antioch, see, that's where it was. It wasn't applied to Jesus' followers in Jerusalem. It was applied to Jesus' followers in Antioch. The followers of Jesus in Antioch are the followers of Paul. They are not the followers of James, Peter, John, and Mary Magdalene. Make a distinction, people. The followers of Jesus were a secondary movement converted through the work and writings and letters of Paul, not the followers of Jesus that lived in Jerusalem. If first applied to Jesus' followers in Antioch, Roman officials may have coined the word to distinguish the Christian group from Judaism. See what was going on in Jerusalem, with James, Peter, John, and Mary Magdalene, the original followers of Jesus, that was Judaism. This shit right here called Christian and Christianity, that was a term that was called to differentiate between what was going on in Israel and Jerusalem versus what they had going on in the Gentile nations. Perhaps Christian was used to designate a Christian movement as hostile toward Agrippa. No matter where the term originated, it was first a word of scorn and ridicule. Goddamn. I'm going past now. I think I have something in this book. This is the Interpreter's Dictionary of the Bible. I should have that marked. Christian. The Interpreter's Dictionary of the Bible. What does it say? Christ, Christian. Did I mark anything? Yeah. Okay. Now we're looking at the Interpreter's Dictionary of the Bible, A through D. And what does it say? It has an entry for Christian. Let's read it. Okay. This word means Christian. Since Christian is a Latinism and was contributed neither by Jews who, not accepting Jesus as Messiah, would have not so entitled his followers. See? Nor by Christians themselves. They had other preferred designations like disciples, brothers, saints, believers, and of course the way, etc. Nor did they make common use of the title until the 2nd century. It has been maintained that the designation was coined by the Roman police or by Roman officials to designate the Christian movement as hostile to Herod Agrippa. It still remains possible that Luke's information is correct. The 3 occurrences of Christian in the New Testament suggest that the term was at this time primarily used as a pagan designation. Its infrequent use in the New Testament indicates not so much lateness of origin as origin. Not so much lateness of origin as pagan providence. If current in Nero's time, its origin must have been fairly early. Also, if the term Christian was first used in jest or in scorn, see, it is easily understood why the Christian should have avoided it. Let me wrap this session up because we're getting late. And so, when we study the history of Christianity and the word Christian, we find out that the word Christian, it was a disgusting, derogatory term of scorn. And it was created by Gentiles. And that the people in Jerusalem, James, John, Peter, Mary Magdalene, they never heard of the term. They'd rather be called disciples, those of the way. And so, when we go back, and look at Google, we know. Let's go back and listen to what they say first. That's on. I think it's on 6. That's on 620. 620.
For those who lack knowledge and understanding of this matter, the first Christians, biblical Christians, were Israelites.
The first biblical Christians was Israelites, based upon the biblical writings.
And now we know that these two nutwings are absolutely wrong, because the first biblical Christians were not Israelites. They were not. The first biblical Christians were Gentiles converted through the Apostle Paul. The first biblical people that followed Jesus were known as those of the way. See? They were initially called disciples, believers, or followers of the way. So they're wrong. They're absolutely incorrect. They can talk loud, but the history doesn't say that. The first followers of Jesus were Israelites, were Hebrews, were Jews through and through, and they never heard the phrase, the term, the word, the verbiage, Christian or Christianity. That shit would come later on, and it would be white folks and Gentiles that would create the phrase Christian, a Greek word, and it would be those folks under Apostle Paul that would start being called Christian. And they didn't name themselves. The Roman army, the Roman government, they would use the word Christian in disgrace, in scorn, negatively, to label those people that were following a nigga that died in Jerusalem and had gone on to heaven. But the people that were in there in Jerusalem with Jesus, they never heard the phrase Christian. They never used the word Christian. And they certainly would not have allowed outsiders, Gentiles, to name or rename their movements. You got it? Struggle Doctrine, Jake Doctrine, and his reading sycophant, they simply don't know the history. No, no, no. The first Christians were not Israelites. The first Christians were Gentiles converted through the Apostle Paul at Antioch. The dudes who knew Jesus, James, the leader of the Jerusalem church and the brother of Jesus, they were called the disciples of the Lord. They were called those of this way. They never heard the phrase Christian. They did not refer to themselves as Christians. They did not refer to their new belief in Jesus as Christianity. That was some white folk shit. That was some Gentile shit. And there's no way under the sun that these people in Jerusalem who walked and talked with Jesus were going to allow some white folks, some outsiders, some Gentiles 400 miles away in Antioch, Syria, to name or rename what they got going on. That shit didn't happen. And so, we'll come back. But I'm bringing the facts. I'm bringing it like a TI is. We'll talk to you again. Peace.